Hello and welcome to News Central now on News Central Television. I am Lekan Onabanjo. The top stories at this hour. Nigeria Labour Congress cautions state governors against dictatorial tendencies over minimum wage. Budget faults Nigerian government's plan to run 4 budgets concurrently. Togo implements COVID screening tests for returning pilgrims. Details to come your way shortly. Let's begin by telling you that BudgIT, a civic tech organization, has condemned the federal government's plan to implement 4 national budgets concurrently. On June 27, the National Assembly extended the capital component of the 2023 Appropriation Act and its supplementary budget, overlapping with the 2024 budget. President Bola Tinubu is expected to submit the 2024 supplementary budget soon, resulting in 4 budgets running in 2024. BudgIT's country director, Gabriel Okeowo, called this a worrisome development, noting that budgets worldwide typically run for 12 months. BudgIT warned that concurrent budgets would lead to competition for scarce resources and negatively impact essential projects and service delivery. It also urged the government to return to a disciplined January to December budget calendar. In the meantime, the presidency has clarified that the 2023 budget extension ensures full project execution following criticism by civic tech organization BudgIT. The National Assembly approved President Bola Tinubu's request to extend the capital component of the 21.83 trillion naira 2023 Appropriation Act and the 2.1 trillion naira 2023 Supplementary Appropriation Act until December 31, 2024. This means the capital allocations for 2023 and 2024 will run concurrently. Presidential Adviser Bayo Onanuga explained that this decision addresses funding delays that prevented budget execution. The extension allows for the completion of these projects, such as those under the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security. By Vahyala Kwaga, Senior Researcher and Policy Analyst, BudgIT Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Delighted to be here as always.
So first, what we're hearing now is that there's a possibility that 4 budgets will be run by the Nigerian government within a financial year, and the government says there's nothing wrong with it. Now, 4 budgets to run, is that ideal to even start with? And do you see anything wrong with it? Let's start from there.
So the act of this current administration to, as it were, stretch the implementation dates of certain capital expenditures is not necessarily unusual. The previous administration had done so, I think, once or twice. I recall that one of Buhari's budgets, if I'm not mistaken, the 2022 fiscal year, had certain things spill into 2023. And 2021, I recall as well, had certain components that brought into 2022. I think they were extended to about March of 2022. So it is not unusual to have maybe 1 or 2 aspects of the capital budget being brought into the next fiscal year. As a matter of fact, the issue of the principle of budget annuality, now that's a principle of good budgeting that ensures that budgets do not go beyond 1 fiscal year. They are not extended beyond 12 calendar months, whether your calendar month is from March of this year to February of the next year, or from June of this year to May of the next year, I think, as the United States tends to do. As long as you keep it within 12 months, there really isn't much of a problem. The challenge arises when there is inadequate monitoring and evaluation of the way these monies are spent. And that leads to cost overruns and also leads to challenges in proper audit. And for Nigeria, where audit reports come out 4 years, 3-4 years after the particular fiscal year has passed, it leaves a lot to be desired in terms of the quality of reporting and the quality of monitoring and evaluation. But in principle, on the face of it, there really is nothing wrong in extending certain aspects of a budget. But when it goes more than two budgets or two separate components, and we're entering 3 and 4, it will become difficult for the federal government to really oversee the entire aspect, the entire range of budget implementation, seen as monitoring and evaluation and reporting are not often done to the highest standards in Nigeria.
So I actually like the fact that you've concluded, because we're talking about a budget and a supplementary budgets, and absolutely economists will say there are actually no issues when you have such run into another financial year. But then when you have two budgets, two supplementary budgets, then that calls for some sort of questioning. Now, in the light of this, Vahyala, how do you think the Nigerian government will be able to ensure financial stability and resource allocation and monitoring? Because it's one of the things you mentioned. So if we have a government that cannot ensure that, don't you think that would, at the end of the day, speak more to issues around accountability and the inability of government to be able to track its records over time?
Absolutely. I mean, you perfectly summarized our concerns as an organization, which we suspect the rest of Nigerians share. It's one thing for a government that has been very open and transparent and consistent in providing information to say it wants to extend a particular aspect of a previous year's budget. It's another thing for a government that is not known to be timely, that is not known to be fully transparent, that is not known to be fully accountable, to say it wants to extend certain capital projects. Now, there are several layers of financial control that the Nigerian federal budget has, ranging from controls that stem from the Accountant General's office, to those that stem from the Treasury and the Minister of Finance, to those that stem from the ministers of the particular departments, agencies, to the directors, of accounts that also authorize spending, to the budget monitoring and evaluation officials of the various MDAs, to the budget office of the Federation. There are several layers upon which financial control is implemented and executed. The problem is that far too often there's not enough publication of this process. The civil society, the media isn't really carried along when these oversights, when these monitorings and evaluations are being carried out. And it is important for people in a democracy, or for a government that claims it's a democracy and a republic, to understand that the media and the public have a right to know how these funds are being spent, whether the bottlenecks or the blockages are coming from the Accountant General's office or from the Treasury or from the ministry itself. Citizens and the media has a right to know, or rather they have a right to know. Going to the issue of tracking these projects, again, for those who may not be aware, this administration has not published the budget implementation reports since it assumed office. I think this is extremely, extremely worrisome and concerning, seeing as we do not even know how well, we do not even know how efficient the budgets have been since 2023, at least since Q2 of 2023. We're approaching Q2 of 2024. I mean, it is unacceptable that this government has been unable to provide details on how the budget has been implemented, how revenue has come in, how much, and what the variance is from projections, and how well or how efficient expenditure has been carried out, and its variations from what has been projected. All we hear is piecemeal data from this agency or from this institution saying they have earned this much or they have spent this much, and it is not coming in a holistic, unified format for the media and for civil society and for citizens to really take a look at. So for a government that has already shown, basically from day one, that it does not prioritize providing public information, it really does speak to the level of commitment to the principles of accountability and transparency that this government claims it has. And it really should be a point of concern for media and civil society organizations to push for more accountability and transparency from the government.
All right, now let's quickly look at what the presidential advisor Bayo Onanuga actually gave as an excuse. Now, I'd like to find out if that is tenable. He talked about fund delays, and that made it impossible for project execution. Now, if that is a challenge, and we are saying that, why would you still go on to actually run or to start pushing for another budget and another supplementary budget, having 4 budgets run within a cycle. What do you think would have been the appropriate thing for the government to do? Because we know that fund delays are actually things that do happen, and budgets need to be performed. Funds need to come in, projects need to be rolled out. But then here is a constraint that the presidency is saying has actually inhibited the ability to ensure that this budget execution is optimally fulfilled.
I mean, it's understandable that there are funding delays, and the evidence, I suppose, is found in the frequent and large-scale borrowings that this administration has embarked on. I think in its first year, the Tinubu administration has borrowed a considerable amount of money, and we're talking about Euro bonds that have very high interest rates. We're talking about domestic securities that oftentimes are not directed towards uses that can be tracked. Professionals and experts have said that instead of the government to focus more on infrastructure bonds that are mandated to be used for infrastructure, it uses more open-ended securities, which means that we do not always know what the government uses this domestic borrowing to do. And I think that is a huge red flag in terms of accountability and the principles of good government. But speaking to the issue raised by Mr. Onanuga, I do not think the excuse is very tenable. And why I say so is that these projects need to be identified and prioritized. And the people, I suppose through the National Assembly, must be given explanations as to why this particular project in this particular ministry requires prioritization. It's not unusual for the government to extend a capital project into the next fiscal year. Dealing with the Nigerian budget, I have seen in several instances across the ministries, projects that were commenced in a previous budget, appearing in the next budget. And there's a brief description in the budget line that states it is an ongoing project. So we need to understand why these unnamed projects, frankly, I think the explanation he gave looked more like an excuse because it lacked detail and it really showed some flippancy or some flippancy to the general public in how serious he takes these issues of public financial management. So going back to the delays, yes, it is true that there may be funding delays, there may be delays in attaining or acquiring authorizations to incur expenditure, there may be issues with procurement, there may be issues with contracting, but we as a people, we as civil society expect the federal government to have honed its skills in budgeting, to have perfected the art of budgeting. The government knows how much funds it has. The government knows how much it wants to spend. Okay. The government knows the officials that handle this process. Yeah. So it's always interesting to hear these explanations of delays and bottlenecks when the civil service is under the control of the government. So are you as the government telling us you cannot control your own house? It really is an interesting excuse.
Well, Vahyala Kwaga, Senior Researcher and Policy Analyst, BudgIT Foundation, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
As always, thank you for having me.
All right. We're going to a short break on the news. We have more stories for you. Don't go away. Just stay with us. The Central Bank of Nigeria has announced new guidelines for depositing foreign currency notes. The directive was detailed in a circular issued by the Director of Currency Operations, Mohammed Shulaja, and posted on the bank's website on Friday. From now on, banks can deposit excess foreign currency with the Apex Bank, but there are some rules to follow. The maximum deposit allowed is $10 million per day for $100 and $50 notes, and $1 million per day for smaller denominations like $20 notes. Deposits can only be made at CBN branches in Abuja and Lagos. A handling fee of 0.30% will be charged to the bank's accounts with the CBN. The move aims to deepen the foreign exchange market, boost liquidity, and align exchange rates in the official and parallel markets. Well, I'll tell you that Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission has cleared the air over the tenure of local government chairmen nationwide, saying the Electoral Act as amended 2022 now makes provision for a 4-year tenure instead of 3 as stipulated in the old Electoral Act. The chairman of the commission, while meeting with members of the Inter-Party Advisory Council in Abuja over controversy surrounding area council polls in Abuja, says that only after swearing-in can salaries be drawn by the elected officials.
In the exercise of its powers as the lawmaking body for the Federal Capital Territory, the National Assembly extended the tenure of the area councils from 3 to 4 years, thereby aligning it with executive and legislative elections nationwide. This is one of the important provisions of the Electoral Act 2022. The Act came into force on Friday, 25th February 2022, 2 weeks after the last area council elections in the FCT.
I'll tell you that the National Bureau of Statistics says the national average cost of a healthy diet per adult per day was 1,041 naira in May 2024. This marks a 1% increase from April's 1,035 naira. The cost of a healthy diet represents the least expensive combination of locally available items that meet global dietary guidelines, excluding transportation and meal preparation costs. The highest average cost of a healthy diet in May was in the southeast at 1,119 naira, while the lowest was in the northwest at 919 naira. The most expensive states were Ebonyi 1,225 naira, Abia 1,215 naira, and Anambra 1,205 naira, and the least expensive were Kano 898 naira and Jigawa 899 naira. Since October 2023, the cost of a healthy diet has risen by 32%, driven by increases in starchy staples, legumes, nuts, seeds, and animal source foods. Now, to discuss this, we're joined by Dr. Chinasa Amadi, an international board-certified lifestyle medicine physician, as she joins me from Lagos, Nigeria. Dr. Amadi, thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me.
So to be quite realistic, for me, I think 1,000 naira per day for someone to get a healthy food seems to be out of the question, if we were to categorically put it. But then I'd like to find out from you, as a certified lifestyle person when it comes to food and nutrition, do you think that is actually doable, 1,000 naira to feed healthily? Is it possible?
So I think it first of all depends on what you define as healthy. Yeah, because the group still classifies animal protein is having the most, the highest percentage of expense as per in the cost of healthy diet. So animal protein is still a lot more expensive. Plant options are still a lot cheaper, with legumes, nuts, seeds as the cheapest in the food group category. So is it possible? It's all about remodifying your choices. So you're not going to just, it's not business as usual anymore. You're going to have to now look for what is available and affordable for you and sustainable in the location you are in. So it can be when you decide that you don't need to have a lot of obstacles in your food, and yet that will still be a healthy diet.
So what about if what is available within your locality is not healthy enough?
So it's all you have to. There's in each location. I always say we are blessed. In each location, there's something available. I grew up eating greens and ugu, but now I am using Ianapaja for my food. Ianapaja is a vegetable that is called, they also call it hospital is far. I have never eaten that before now, but because that is readily available, it grows literally wild. You can now use moringa, grows readily wild, and it's used in making soups in the north. So now, now that we are here in Lagos, we're learning to incorporate moringa leaves in our foods. So you have to acclimatize your taste buds to the location where you're in. There is something healthy for you there. You can still have your grains, your ogi, your pap. Instead of just using corn, you're adding your millet and adding your dawa, grinding them together, grinding well, and you do not need to sieve. When you don't sieve it, you are getting more probiotic, you're getting getting more fiber and you are getting more quantity for the same value. So before you sieve your pap and you're getting a lower amount of pap, but now you don't sieve it, you have doubled the ration and you have saved on cost that way. So a lot of modification that can still be very healthy, and you're going to just learn to adapt to new tastes. That's all.
Okay, we know that is quite challenging, most especially for those who are not educated along this line. But I'd like to find out from you, Dr. Amadi, do you foresee, in the light of this conversation, the possibility of an increased prevalence of diet-related chronic diseases among the population?
So I think it can swing both ways. It can swing both ways, because if people are not educated as far, you can actually eat this. You can have golden melon is in season now. You can get golden melon instead of waiting for watermelon or waiting for apples that are a lot more expensive. Go for the yellow golden melon. So people say, I don't like it. I don't eat it. Now, can you start eating it? It will reduce the diseases that can arise. Instead of looking for what is fried, what is processed, or what has so much oil, you need to now, but we're forced to reduce our portion. We've been forced to reduce the amount of oil we use, which is not even good for our health. So we can actually use this. I was telling someone yesterday that now 200 naira is already portioned for you. Before you eat it this size, now you're just having that 200 naira more. And that's enough for an adult, literally, unless you have just natural longer truths. That's a different situation. But then it's important to now modify your taste buds, and you can still maintain good health, because you can't even buy cough syrup for 1,200 naira now. It's a lot expensive now.
So we talk more about those who might not have enough funds when it comes to getting quality food for consumption. But what about those who actually have the money but prefer to eat mostly processed foods? Do you think that's a habit that can be broken?
It can be broken with consistent education. One thing humans can change if they want to change. So just the way if you choose to change a habit, you don't have to wait till you fall sick, especially when you can afford it. Why will you make... We've related processed food with affluence, and that is where we need to change that thought pattern, that because I'm having a burger, I'm having a sausage, so I am affluent, I'm wealthy. No. You're just getting a wealthier type of choice disease. So it's important to consistently educate the public about, hey, go back to the basics, eat foods closer to the ground, the less processed, the better, and the better for your health. It's not a sign of affluence. That thought process needs to change. And that can change with consistent education, consistent advocacy of the right information. Okay. That will change the game.
Well, education is what you have done on the news this afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. Chinasa Amadi, for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you for having me.
We'll now move on with other stories now. Our 4-day security summit aimed to tackle emerging security challenges facing the African continent and being hosted by the International Association of Women Police Officers is expected to begin on July the 2nd. The conference, which is being hosted by female police officers, will hold in Abuja and host an array of female officers from over 50 African countries and will spotlight issues of inclusivity and effective collaboration. Marvelous Obomanu attended the pre-summit press conference and gives us an insight into what is to be expected.
The conference, with the theme Addressing Africa's Security Challenges and Safety through Collaboration and Inclusivity, will feature both female police officers and law enforcement officers from across 54 countries in Africa. The Nigerian Police Force Gender Advisor, in a pre-summit press conference in Abuja, gave more details of the event, which will hold between the 2nd and 5th of July. She says that the conference will host an array of seasoned security experts from across Africa and the international community to help analyze critical security issues confronting the continent in order to chart a way forward.
The IAWP Africa Region Training Conference which is scheduled, as I said earlier, July 2nd to 5th in Abuja. This underscores the urgent need for collaborative and inclusive approaches to tackle the security challenges facing African continent. We are expecting participants from the 54 African countries, including other international delegates from other continents.
The co-founder of the Africa Women Impact Summit also revealed that the conference will benefit the nation immensely.
The people that are coming to speak are security experts. I mean, international security experts that are going to be addressing security challenges. Then, of course, we all know there's a local part of security. There's a whole lot. You believe in me, after this program, you're going to see a lot of changes when it comes to security of the country, not just Nigeria, the continent as a whole, because the experts are coming together to put their brains together for the very first time.
International women policemen across the continent, they are coming to Nigeria. They need to come and learn what we are doing. There are quite a number of emerging security issues, and women are in the forefront of fighting this. And Nigeria has brought in some innovation, especially in building inclusivity in the policing system. And the idea of community policing, all those things they are coming to learn to see how we are doing it in Nigeria and what we are doing and doing very well.
They also add that the event is a proof of President Bola Tinubu's commitment to ensure inclusivity in the nation's security landscape.
President Bola Tinubu has done tremendously well in building inclusivity in the security system. Number one, Nigerian police has the first gender advisor. Nigerian police has now a female first secretary, which is something that is very unique. Apart from that, you look at the immigration, the Controller General of Nigerian Immigration Service is a woman. So women are taking the forefront and they are doing very well.
We all know that security is a collective responsibility. Very important. Everybody, including our Rise, News Central, everybody needs a police to guide him or her. And anything that has to do with the police should be of utmost concern.
The conference is expected to chart a pathway for effective women participation in law enforcement on the continent. In Abuja for News Central, Marvelous Obomman.
Now to Labour matters. The Nigeria Labour Congress has warned state governors against attempting to unilaterally determine the minimum wage, stating that it is a collective agreement that ensures a minimum standard of living for workers. NLC spokesperson Benson Upah made this known in a statement on Friday. The Congress emphasized that the national minimum wage is not the same as individual state pay structures, which already reflect each state's unique financial capabilities. Instead, it represents a national wage floor, below which no worker should be paid. They cautioned that allowing governors to pay workers whatever they deem fit would negate this principle and threaten the welfare of Nigerian workers and the national economy. Earlier, Public Affairs Analyst Ahmed Hussaini spoke to us on this development. I will bring you details in our subsequent bulletins. Coming up on the news. Togo implements COVID screening tests for returning pilgrims. Details of this and others will come your way shortly. Stay with us. We tell you now that Togo has become the second West African country to implement COVID screening tests and face masks for pilgrims returning from the annual Muslim Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca. Senegal was the first to implement voluntary tests suspecting COVID-19 among the 1,300 reported deaths. Togo's government announced on Friday that Hajj pilgrims must undergo compulsory COVID tests, limit contact, wear masks, wash regularly, and avoid large gatherings for 10 days after their return. Saudi Arabia reported 1,301 deaths during the pilgrimage, attended by 1.8 million people in extreme heat. Most pilgrims were unauthorized and walked long distances in direct sunlight. About 2,500 Togolese pilgrims attended the Hajj this year, departing in June and returning on special flights between June 29 and July 3. The mission of the SADC panel of elders oversight committee on Lesotho reforms have begun their consultations with key stakeholders. The delegation, which is led by the former president of Tanzania and also the chairman of the panel of elders, Dr. Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, came to Lesotho with the aim to give and get information on the reforms' progress. Dr. Kikwete said this first mission in Lesotho is intended to find information about the comprehensive implementation of reforms report from the political leaders, civil society organizations, and everyone involved, including His Majesty King Leslie III and the Prime Minister. And now to discuss this, we're joined by Silence Chirumbira, a journalist. Silence Chirumbira, it's nice to have you around on the news.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, beautiful. So can you provide a background of the reforms process? What is it that Lesotho wants to do with these reforms?
The major expected outcome really is stability. Lesotho has been really unstable, particularly from 2012 when it had its first coalition government. After that, the emergence of that coalition government, it became apparent that the prime minister wielded so much power, and the reforms essentially are necessary to make sure that the prime minister's power is kept in check. For instance, the former prime minister, Thomas Tabane, he had become known for capriciously replacing service chiefs, officials in the judiciary, like the Chief Justice, the President of the Court of Appeal, and even proroguing Parliament. So that much power ensured that Lesotho had become so unstable. And these are some of the key issues that the reforms are supposed to address.
So then what are the major challenges that Lesotho is facing when it comes to implementing these reforms? And how do you think that those challenges can be surmounted? Because we see that it probably might just be impacting the country's stability and developments.
So the biggest problem really is people that have followed Lesotho politics will realize that it's difficult to come up with a consensus, particularly when it involves politicians. But also, more essentially, Lesotho politicians seem not to be keen to implement these reforms, because what they do is they limit their power. So whoever is expecting to get into power would try as much as possible to sabotage the process, so that when the time comes for them to be in power, their control of the institutions of the state is not limited. So you see lots of bigger political parties like the former ruling party, the DC, doesn't seem to be keen on implementing the reforms. So from my point of view, the biggest challenge hindering implementation of the reforms is lack of political will.
So how does this affect the citizens? Are they also open to the implementation of these reforms? Will it speak more to how they've been affected by how their country has been ruled so far, or you will say that they just prefer the status quo?
The citizens are left in a quandary, really, if you look at it, because now they have a lot of politicians that they have followed religiously in the past. Most of them do not care about implementing the reforms, but also what's said is that the livelihoods of the people are affected negatively, adversely by the lack of implementation of the reforms, because an unstable Lesotho means that there is no FDI, for instance, and Lesotho's economy is solely dependent on South Africa. Lesotho imports simple things like cabbages from South Africa when it touts itself as a very strong agricultural nation, and that points to a lack of leadership in the agricultural sector, something that a stable Lesotho should be able to achieve. So Lesotho's citizens are affected daily. There are challenges daily. Lesotho relies on international handouts from donors for its health, for its judiciary, for its social services. And for a country that is just over 2 million in population, you would think they should be able to do it on their own. But when the country is unstable, those are the results. And that is an indication that the reforms are essential, they are needed, and the sooner that they are implemented, then the better for the citizens.
Okay, Silence Chirumbira, thank you so much for helping us understand this better. We tell you that U.S. presidential candidate and former President Donald Trump is claiming victory after Thursday's presidential debate against President Joe Biden. Trump told a crowd in Virginia on Friday that Biden's performance was a big victory for him, calling the president corrupt and incompetent. Meanwhile, Biden acknowledged his own struggles in the debates during a rally in North Carolina, saying he may not be as smooth as a speaker as he used to be, but he knows how to tell the truth and get things done. Trump also dismissed suggestions that Democrats might replace Biden on the ticket, saying his polls show Biden performs better than other potential Democratic candidates.
And I think if you really had... Hello, Virginia. Did anybody last night watch a thing called the debate? That was a big one. But as you saw on television last night, we had a big victory against a man that really is looking to destroy our country. He's the worst. He's the most corrupt, the most incompetent president in the history of our country. The question every voter should be asking themselves today is not whether Joe Biden can survive a 90-minute debate performance, but whether America can survive 4 more years of crooked Joe Biden in the White House. And he was never really at the top of his game. He was never very good, but now he's really not good. Last night was a defeat not only for Biden, but for the entire radical left.
We talk sports now. Nigeria's track and field star Tobi Amusan has been cleared of anti-doping violations by the Court of Arbitration for Sports. The 26-year-old world record holder faced allegations from the World Anti-Doping Agency over whereabouts failures. CAS dismissed the appeals by the Athletics Integrity Units and WADA, upholding the World Athletics Disciplinary Tribunal's decision that Amusan committed no anti-doping offenses. While the CAS panel found 2 filing failures, they did not support the alleged third failure that could have led to a 2-year ban. This verdict is a significant relief for Amusan and her supporters in Nigeria. With her name cleared, Amusan can now focus on winning gold at upcoming Paris Olympics. Away from that, Football Kenya Federation Premier League champions Gor Mahia have been licensed to participate in the 2024-2025 CAF Champions League, marking their return after a challenging absence. Previously excluded, despite winning the league, they failed to meet club licensing requirements due to debts to former foreign players. Gor Mahia is among 4 Kenyan clubs granted licenses by Football Kenya Federation's first instance body. Clubs must be licensed through the CAF Club Licensing online platform and meet criteria in sporting, infrastructure, personnel and administration, legal and financial aspects. The FIB thoroughly reviewed compliance and will guide and potentially revoke licenses if standards are not met. The status of arch rivals AFC Leopards remains undisclosed, adding suspense to the local football scene. And in Europe, Aston Villa have signed Chelsea left back Ian Maatsen for £35 million. The 22-year-old spent the second half of last season on loan at Borussia Dortmund, helping them reach the Champions League final. Currently with the Netherlands squad for Euro 2024, Maatsen is Villa's second summer signing after striker Lewis Dobbin from Everton. Chelsea acquired Maatsen in 2019 from PSV Eindhoven, and he impressed during loan spells at Charlton, Coventry, Burnley and Dortmund. He helped Burnley win promotion to the Premier League in 2022-2023 and struggled for regular minutes later on under Mauricio Pochettino at Chelsea, where he made 15 appearances last season. During his loan at Dortmund, Martin played 23 times and scored 3 goals. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, we'll take a look at some of our top stories. Nigeria Labour Congress cautions state governors against dictatorial tendencies over minimum wage. Budget faults Nigerian government's plan to run 4 budgets concurrently. We also told you that Togo has implemented COVID screening tests for returning pilgrims. You can send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. Follow us on social media via @NewsCentralTV and watch us live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekan Onabanjo.